My name is Linda Ramsden, and I am the founder and director of the UK branch for ICAHD. So we are here, one of the chapters that has supported the work of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions based in Jerusalem. The ICAHD's focus over the years has been the demolition of Palestinian homes, and it's also had a focus on working for a just and sustainable solution for both people groups. And by studying the situation on the ground, we've come to the conclusion that the best way forward, which is just for everybody, is for there to be a one democratic state solution. Again, the topic of today's webinar is demolitions within Israel and the impact on women and children. Our speakers are Halil Alamor, who lives in al-Araqib in the Naqab, the Negev. Nabila Espinoli is joining us from Nazareth, and Jeff Helper is speaking to us from Jerusalem. When the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions was established in 1997, its focus was on home demolitions within the occupied Palestinian territory of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. Over time, we learned that most years there were actually more demolitions within the state of Israel, as many as 3 times more happening there. For example, 900 demolitions in 1 year compared to 300 in the occupied territory. So ICAHD began to have a more broader focus to highlight this phenomena. In addition, learning more about these demolitions led us to change our rhetoric from previously only calling for the end of the occupation to being more inclusive with a call for the end of settler colonialism, because all of historic Palestine has been affected by the Zionist agenda to take as much land as possible with as few Palestinians as possible. Honestly, we're so busy with this whole demolition issue and our campaigns. One of them that we're working with other organizations, which includes Stop Demolitions and Help for Palestinian Families, is one where we're sending postcards now to the NSPCC. This is a British charity, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. It's following on from other letters we've written, which they've taken no notice of. So we're going the next step in sending postcards to the NSPCC because it is involved in taking tarnished money from JCB. These are bulldozers that are used to demolish Palestinian homes. And so we're putting that much more pressure on them to be responsible, to be ethical, to be moral. If you could check the section on our website, you will see information in the chat line later. You can order postcards, they'll be sent to you free of charge, but we'd like to receive your order by Friday, the 14th of August. All you have to do then is sign the card, put on a stamp, and send it to the NSPCC. And now one of the unrecognized villages in the Negev, the Naqab. Halil's main career has been as a high school mathematics teacher. Now retired. He is an active member of the al-Araqib Community Council and a member of the Regional Council for the Unrecognized Bedouin Villages in the Negev, and is a secretariat member of the Negev Coexistence Forum for Civil Equality. Halil Al-Amour has represented Bedouins in the Naqab at the UN and the EU and briefs international delegations, including UN special rapporteurs visiting the Naqab. He has served as field researcher for Adalah, which is the legal center for Arab minority rights in Israel. In the last few years, he's gained a law degree and is now the co-director of al-Hiran legal center, which advocates for the rights of Palestinians within Israel. Halil, we are delighted that you've been able to join us today. And now over to you, please.
Oh, thank you very much for the very impressive introduction. And sorry for the delay again. How can I start? I need to represent the numbers that we always, every year in our organizations. As Linda mentioned, I am a member of several organizations, human rights organizations, that one of them is the NCF, the Negev Coexistence Forum, who monitor the numbers every year and submit all of them into an annual report that we translate to 3 languages, Arabic, Hebrew, and English. And we spread it. The one that we have today is concluding the numbers of the home demolitions. I will represent it soon in 2019. In 2019, the last year. Every year we have numbers, and this year we didn't have the final numbers yet. I'm talking about 2020 that we will represent in next summer. So we will start with the numbers. I have a very short introduction about the unrecognized villages. I can assume that most of you heard already about the unrecognized villages in the Negev, the Bedouin villages of the indigenous people in the Negev, and they are suffering and all the challenges that the Bedouin are facing today. I'm focusing on the Bedouin issues today, not in all the Palestinian struggles and challenges. They are more and bigger than I can mount them in few seconds. That's the issue. The one thing that it is important for me to emphasize is that Bedouins, the Bedouins in the south are subgroup indigenous people, and they are all Israeli citizens. This is the most really challenging and embarrassing issue, that we are Israeli citizens and not being treated as Israeli citizens. I will start with the numbers soon. I hope I have the permission to share my screen with you, Malcolm or any other friends there from the technical issues.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe you can help me. What I can do, admit. Oh, yes. So now I can share my screen with you soon. Share screen. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I now can share my screen, desktop. It is the desktop. And soon you will see my presentation. It is the ICAHD webinar 2020. We are talking about the numbers in 2019, but it's okay. You will have them soon. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. We have the numbers. So I'm talking about the unrecognized villages. This is a general view of one of the villages, and in this case is my village of Al-Sira, as you can see. Everybody can see my screen now? Yeah, okay, I see the signs. Great, great, wonderful. And here is the Negev. If you see, this is the map of Israel, Palestine. And this is the southern part of the state of Israel. This is the Negev area. This is the triangle shape here. It is a huge area. It is 13 million dunams. We use dunams here in Israel. It is about 3 million acres. It's a huge area. And most of it is a desert. And only 10% of the population in Israel, Jews and Arabs, live in this area. So most of them want to live in Tel Aviv and in the center and in Haifa and in the shore area. So it's a huge. And soon I will show you that we will focus on the Negev. This is the Negev. This is the southern part, or the southern part. Eilat must be here in the south. And most of all the Bedouins lived in the Negev in the past till 1948. When Israel came, most of them were evicted from their land. They were expelled to the neighboring Arab countries, to Jordan in this side, to the east. If you remember the map, it's okay. Here is Egypt, most of them to Egypt also. And even some of them to the West Bank. If you hear about al-Khan al-Ahmar, we are talking about the Ka'abne and the Jahalin tribes. They moved to the West Bank. And only 11,000 who remained here out of 90,000 people. Only the very small portion of the population who remained here were moved to this area, which is called the Siyaj area, the reservation area, or the fence area. Literally, the Siyaj area is the fence area. So people lived under military rule during those 18 years, from 1948 till 1966. Then when it was removed, military rule, the Bedouin didn't found any extra lands. All the land that they were moved from was taken by the government. And they remained in this area, which is 10%. But Israel is Israel, and they went more and more and more, and the 10% is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And now we are talking about less than 5%. We are talking about 4% or something like that. While we are growing and growing and growing. Those 11,000, remember, 11,000 that remained, that survived the Naqab, the disaster, those people, this is a small group, growed and growed, and today we are talking about 250,000 Bedouins, 250,000, even more. It's around 260,000 people. And we are 1/3 of the Negev population, but we don't have 1/3 of the land. We have 3%, 4%, something like that. That's the issue. And Israel do a lot of things to confiscate and take more and more pieces of land. This document is very important, and I always love to show that and share with you. This is a document that was given to the sheikhs of the tribes when their delegation of Bedouin sheikhs met with Winston Churchill in 1921. And he promised that they will save everything for them, their land and their culture and everything. But you know, promises is promises. And when Israel came, everything changed. So this is the Siyaj area. We just make it big, a bit larger so you can see it. And here is the green spots are the 7 Bedouin towns that the government established during the last 20 years. And here you see a lot of circles here and here. Those circles, I don't know which color you see there. They are purple circles, I think. They are representing the unrecognized villages. We have 35 unrecognized villages now. And those villages are under demolition orders, under demolition threats, evictions, and land confiscation and deforestation by the GNF and everything. I will talk soon about the numbers and leave the questions to the end, maybe you will see. So this is the first chart that I want to show you. This is the demolitions. You can see the numbers that are increasing and increasing and increasing every year. In 2003, we started with about 700 demolitions. The next year, we have almost, we have doubled. We have doubled. They doubled the numbers, and it's around 1,100. And the year after it is 1982, and after, and you see in 2017 we have really they have really doubled the numbers, 2020 and 220. The last year we have 2,000. Now it's stable, more or less, 2,241 houses every year. So especially you see that the big increase or big jump in these numbers in the last 3 years when we have Uri Ariel. Uri Ariel is the minister, is the agriculture minister on behalf of the Jewish house. It's a very radical right-wing party that was part of the coalition, and they have the file of the Bedouins or the Bedouin authority, and he promised to help the Bedouin families. You can see how he helped them. We will move to the second one. Here we can see the administrative demolition orders using a new technology that they use. I don't know how, sometimes in war or to attack other countries or enemies or terrorists. I don't know how. They use this system to identify in new houses, in new buildings. It's called the simplex. Using simplex, it's a special software that they show them the new houses that was built. Even a small room that the Bedouin family can build for themselves, so small roof, they can come and identify it, recognize it through the system, and demolish it. You see, in 2018, it was about 4,000, and now it is 3,158. And files opened, you can see the files opening the new files for the Bedouins. It's a criminal files for the Bedouins are increasing also from 500 to 579. Administrative orders, those orders that issued by the authority, they don't need even to go to the court. Administrative orders by the local authority here. The other chart that I wanted to share with you is that the self-demolition order, which is really a horrible thing. I cannot understand it, and not even any of the Bedouin leadership or the people here. People demolish their houses by themselves, and I'm sure every one of you asking why do people demolish their houses, destroy their houses by themselves? And you can see, I just want to be sure that you understand the numbers here. You see again, look at the last 3 years, 2017, 18, and 2019. You can see the very large numbers here. And the yellow numbers here, the yellow part, which is about 80% of the total demolitions, are self-demolitions. People don't want to see the police attacking the village. About 100 of policemen are making like a siege around the village. They are blockading the village from all the sides and horrifying and intimidating the people from every side. And anybody that protests or talk or do anything, they take them and arrest them immediately, very brutally, very violent way, and they demolish the village. People don't want to show that to their family, don't want to show them to to expose their children to the policemen aggression and violation and violence. And the other thing is they want to save the money that they are going to the government to shoot on the people in the way of fines. People have to pay very large fines if the government come and demolish their houses. It is about 300,000 shekels. It's about $100,000. These demolitions. These fines can exceed or be around this number, this amount. The last thing is, no, it's okay. I will stop here. I don't want to show you all the horrifying pictures. This is the day they demolished al-Araqib. If we have time, maybe later I will give back the floor or the microphone to Linda and wait. This is those pictures came from al-Araqib. It was in July, sorry, 2010. From that time, Sheikh Sayyah, the Sheikh of this tribe of al-Araqib, up to now is living with his family, with his wife, with his children and grandchildren in the cemetery. They have already demolished the village more than 100 times. I stopped counting, but my friends in the NCF and other organization continue counting, and I think we are around 140 something times. And he's still standing there and want to build the village every time and do. This is Sheikh Sayyah, and you can see the house, and here are the graveyard. He is in the graveyard. And he always say one sentence that I cannot forget anytime. He says, this is the only place in the world that dead people are protecting the alive ones. He always says that.
Excellent. Excellent.
No.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Halil. Very good grounding for us. Obviously, all the demolitions of al-Araqib are not excellent. And I did check the recent number of demolitions. It's 175 demolitions in the last 10 years, so almost monthly. And we are going to return to al-Araqib a little bit later. We'll see a short film clip from there. But it's going to follow what Nabila says to us. So I'm going to move on to Nabila Espinoli, who was born in Nazareth and is a campaigner for civil rights of the Palestinian minority in Israel and equal rights for women. In 1989, she founded Al-Tafula, which is in Nazareth. She's also a founding member of the Masawa Center, a joint Palestinian-Israeli organization based in Haifa. And she works collaboratively with several other organizations. Nabila has written and edited several books and articles on early childhood care and development, as well as the general social and political issues related to women. She lectures on topics including childhood education, Palestinian women in Israel, violence against women, and more. So we started a little bit earlier by showing a film clip of a woman speaking from the village of al-Hiran down in the Naqab. Nabila, would you like to carry on then talking about the research you've done concerning the impact of demolitions on women and children? Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I think we should build upon what Khalil was saying in showing the clip from now or later. I think Malcolm, if you can present the clip from al-Araqib, because it's continue what Khalil was finishing with, which is an excellent introduction. Thank you, Khalil.
نضحك للدنيا بتضحك لنا يوم. يعني عندنا أمل. صح الإنسان بيجي له رعب وبيصيح، بس مش كل مرة بكي. لو بنظلنا بكي بنموت، يتفجر القلب. شي بيضحك وشي بيبكي وشي بيخلي الإنسان قلبه يتأنب على الحاجات اللي بيصير. عادي، شو بدنا نعمل؟ هي الحياة لازم نمشي فيها لقدام مش لورا، ما بنوخر ولا حاجة. بروح 10 دقايق نص ساعة بروح. شو بدنا نعمل؟ عايشين بداخل المقبرة احنا. عندنا بصير هدم كل حوالي من بين 15 يوم لشهر، ايام 15 يوم ايام شهر. دائما لازم كل يوم تيجي على الطن علشان تضب الجلي، عشان تضب الاواعي، برد الاولاد، كل شيء بترفعيه بالسياره. بدهم يهدموا ما بدهم يهدموا، لازم اضب احتياطي. يعني العيشه الطبيعيه كانسان ما في، يعني كل الوقت في قلق في قلق في قلق في قلق، وما في راحه، ما في راحه، ما في راحه حتى لا نفسيه ولا جسمانيه. يعني وبقد ما بيقدروا يضيقوا بدهم يخلوا من النقاب.
Okay, shall we go back to you, Nabila, then to carry on? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, when we speak about house demolition is a policy that exists in all Israel, not only in the Naqab and not only in the unrecognized villages. The new thing about the unrecognized villages that we're speaking about threat to the whole villages, destroying the whole village. And the aim, if you want, it is again another mechanism of control, another mechanism of controlling the Palestinian population inside Israel from living their natural life. And it's actually a process of controlling the land. I mean, when we speak about in 1948, we were speaking about more than only 4% of the land of the historic Palestine was in the land of the Zionist movement, of the hands in the Zionist movement. Today, we're speaking about 3% of the whole land inside Israel that is only private land, and the 3% is not only for Arabs, it's for Arabs and Jews. Most of the land, actually, I think it is one of the places in the world that most of the land is or government land or semi-governmental land through the different Zionist organizations that they control the land. We witnessed from 1948 and above different laws that confiscated the land, and the part of this policy is, or combined to demolition of land, is on control of the land, is the destroying of houses, which that's why it's related to confiscation and related to ownership on the land, where the aim of the government is to control most of the land in Israel. And that's why when we speak about house demolition, we're speaking about more than 60,000 houses which are in dangerous of house demolition. The different allegation that Israel is using for house demolition are very, very different, but mainly most of the villages, or most of the Palestinian villages inside Israel do not have a plan for recognized borders and recognized plan for development of the towns and the villages, and because the aim is to control the land. So, like, if we take the biggest Palestinian city, my city, which is Nazareth, overnight in 1948 we have we were 14,000 in the population, and overnight we became to be 28,000 through internal refugees who came from the destroyed villages surrounded Nazareth, came to Nazareth. And the land of Nazareth has been confiscated to build different Jewish settlements around Nazareth, and you can read about it. Like there is Danny Rubenstein has written a very interesting book overlooking Nazareth, about the process of building Nazareth elite on the land of the confiscated land of Nazareth. But the issue that we're speaking about in our campaign is, when Khalil was speaking about house demolition and he came to speak about al-Araqib, he mentioned Sheikh Sayyah and his family. He didn't mention the role of the family or the role of the woman specifically in this struggle and survival. And the film of al-Araqib shows actually what is the role of the woman within these 8 years. Without them, they wouldn't be able to continue living in this condition, and without the support of the woman. And that's what created for me a question when we began looking at the issue of it was as part of a campaign that we created in the coalition, Alternative Coalition 1325. 1325 is a decision from that to include women in and to protect women and to monitor the status of women within the conflict areas. And normally 1325 in the world and in Israel, they use it to speak about women participation and especially about women political participation, but not to mention the need for protection and the need to monitor the status of women and to protect the woman from violation. So this, after the demolition before two years or 3 years, there was the increase of demolition, and we saw al-Hiran was demolished, and we saw in Kufr Qasim houses were demolished, and today we're still seeing, last week we saw in Beit Jan a struggle against the land confiscation and house demolition. So we see it is continuous, the process. And one of the things that I was like, as a feminist woman activist in the Palestinian community, I realized that women in the Palestinian community, they normally are very active in building the houses. I mean, whenever you have it is the housing, building of a house, it's a project that the women are involved in planning and in a practical building itself, like taking the sands and the stones and carrying them and participating in the real building. But when it comes to speak about house demolition, when it becomes a political issue where people need to speak about the house demolition, mostly the men control the scene, and the issues of women and how the women are impacted by the demolition is not a question. And that's why we created this campaign, and it's called Hear to Her. Listen to her. Listen to her. Listen to her story. Listen to her struggle. And in this campaign, we have 4 films. One is introductory film about house demolition and the impact on women. One is about from the woman in al-Araqib. And by the way, al-Araqib began in 2010. And in the day of the first demolition, the son of Sheikh Sayyah had a daughter, and the daughter is called al-Araqib. And al-Araqib today is 10 years, and 2 weeks ago, they celebrated the 10 years of resistance, 10 years of struggle against house demolition in al-Araqib. And this young girl, the 10 years old girl, is just a just to witness her and to participate with her in a demonstration, it summarized the whole resistance and the learning of resistance. But you're born to resist. You are born to struggle, which is not a natural way and not a funny way, but somehow the resilience that this struggle created is very, very important. And you can see it in the films through the difference between al-Araqib story and al-Hiran story. And now if we're speaking, and that's why the campaign has brought these different stories, as well as the Kufr Qasim story. In the Kufr Qasim story, if you see the film, there is the story of how a woman, a mother, has built the houses for her 2 children, and she saw that destroyed in front of her eyes. Of course, this impact the woman. It's impact the. I mean, there is according to researchers, 60% of the women who are living in after such trauma, they are experience depression, and we can listen and we can hear from the women how they are worried, how they are fearing, how they are feeling. I mean, because most of the attacks comes in the night, at 2 o'clock in the night and at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they come to destroy without any previous notice, which is a trauma for the children and for the women. We're speaking about constant fear. So this story, the story of the women, bring the life to the issue of the destruction, but it's bring the issue of how you live within such a threat all the time, and how you feel within these 10 years of struggle. And you see it that every 15 days, as she said, every 15 days or every month, there is a demolition. They don't know when it comes. They don't know they come and attack in any time they want. So we did that campaign with the aim to say, listen to her, listen to the story of women, to include her story in the history of our struggle, in the history of our as Palestinians struggling against house demolition. The woman had played very important role, and I think one of the very strong pictures that still I have in my mind is the woman of al-Araqib in front of the bulldozer. This picture has moved many of activists to because they saw the resistance and the power of these women. The campaign was used to also connect women to their role as builders, as part of, I mean, we say in Arabic, al-mara banna wal-rajul janna, we say that the woman is the builders, but they literally, when they build the houses, but when the houses are destroyed, they are silenced and their voices is not heard. So we wanted their voice to be heard, first of all, and secondly, to increase and to empower women to join in struggling for their rights and for the protection of their houses and for their rights as Palestinian citizens of the state, but still are violated and not protected. And we connected that to the international campaign on 1325, which this year is 20 years of that decision of 1325, the importance of the role of women in the conflict areas. But I think we still far away from protection, from monitoring, from participation, and from stopping the violation against women's rights and children's rights. So this was the opportunity to do this campaign, and we still continue to bring that discourse of importance of human security to the whole issue, and when we're speaking about the conflict and the need for a different approach to the conflict. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Nabila. You know, in all my years of being involved in the issue of home demolitions, I've not heard anybody speak about the impact of demolitions on women and children in the way that you just have, and the study that you've undertaken with 1325. So what you've said and then with the films are great resources for us. There are 3 questions that have come for, been submitted now. One is for you, Nabila, and I've got 2 for Halil. I'll tell you what the questions are. Nabila, there is a question on the psychological, impact of this on children, and is there counseling available, to children? If you did want to say something on women as well, in terms of counseling. And for Halil, could you give us an update on al-Hiran, which is due to be completely demolished with all the people displaced and put into a reservation? If you could give an update on that. And to say a little bit more about the JNF, the Jewish National Fund's involvement in the displacement of the Palestinians in the Negev. So we'll start with Nabila because we're just listening to you. So to go on from that. And we've just got not more than 10 minutes in total. So I'll be watching you, please. Thank you, Nabila.
Okay, I think normally the officially is not the impact of house demolition and the violation of children's rights within house demolition is a subject that it's not recognized by the official bodies and even the children's rights organization inside Israel. And whenever we were trying to raise these issues, they were saying this is a political issue, we don't relate to this, although it is of course a violation. And we saw a lot of cases like in Galilee. There was years before, several years, there was a destroyment of one village beside al-Sahali, beside the Shfarhammer, and we arrived as an organization to support the rebuilding of the houses. And suddenly we were seeing the children among us, and we realized that no one is talking about the psychology of the children and the support for the children. And we decided to do an action in this, but it was a campaign. It's not a continuous psychological support. There is no continuous psychological support for children in the house demolition in all the areas. And one of the cases that we dealt with was a young woman who actually lost her voice as part of for a period as part of the trauma, and only through our intervention she regained her voice and she was able to speak about after the trauma and the impact of the trauma. So of course, when you see your house and destroyed, and on your clothes in al-Sahali, it was Ramadan and it was 2 days before the feast. So all the clothes, the new clothes for the feast were under the demolition, and we needed at that time also to collect the new clothes for them so that they celebrate the Ramadan. But it is a big trauma for a child when he sees his toys are under the house, under the stones of the houses, among the ruins of the houses. Of course, it's a big trauma, but to my sorrow, there is no one organization who's dealing with that. It is sometimes when some of organizations are visiting or accompanying the one of the villages, then yes, there is a support, but it's not a continuous and not a service that is provided by any of the organization, not even by the unrecognized committees, because I think it is a silent issue, the issue of children and violation against children's rights, but also against women. It is, and the psychology of women, there isn't a real support for most of the mothers and the women that are affected by this trauma.
Thank you, Nabila. That is very sad news. You know, some of us are aware of the Palestine Counseling Center, which is based in Jerusalem and Ramallah, and I think they're also represented in places like Nablus, so within the occupied territory. But within the state of Israel, there isn't that provision. Well, sad news, but thank you, Nabila. Can I now turn to Halil to comment on al-Hiran and the JNF, please?
Yes, please. I will try to have my presentation again if Malcolm help me. I think I can share my presentation. Yeah, it's available again. Yeah, that's great. Yes, here you can see, here we can see, yeah, here we have seen, I maybe will start with the second question, with your second question about the JNF. This is al-Araqib forestation area. These are the lands that they have already taken from the families there. And you can see the sign in the entrance, not exactly in the entrance of the villages, is a few meters, couple of 100 meters from the village. And there, if you can read, it says Yar HaShagririm in Hebrew, or the ambassador's forest. So they are trying all the time to bring in new ideas, very, very creative people. And one is the ambassador's forest. It's an initiative that try to recruit money and support of the international community. And they say, we creating a forest of the ambassadors, for the ambassadors forest. I think not all the countries agree and that all the countries know about that. I know that Switzerland rejected that and they didn't agree and they said, we are not part of that. Here you can see the trees that they planted. It's a fruitless trees that they planted after they have uprooted the olive trees from al-Araqib. You can see them if you went here. They have uprooted the olive trees here, olive trees everywhere. And they even, here they burned the hay packs of the animals here. They burned them. They demolished, when they demolished the village in 2010. I'm still talking about al-Araqib. And here is another tree that was uprooted. And JNF can plant another trees. Now they are concentrating in another area which is called Kharbat al-Watan. Kharbat al-Watan is one of the unrecognized villages. It is in the right hand near Hura, yes. And there are many Bedouin families that they are now trying to take their land, and JNF trying to make sand dams and things to make space for more and more trees there to the forestation. The people are protesting. They built a big tent there. They are protesting the JNF activity there. And now we have a new minister that is in charge of the Bedouin issues. His name is Amir Peretz. He is from the Labour Party, of what remained from the Labour Party, unfortunately. And he he's very active, and he asked to take this file of the Bedouin authority, and he want really to change. And he, if I want to judge him according to his declaration and what he said up to now, it make really a good sense, and he is very positive. I hope that he will translate all that to good deeds, to good actions. We are optimistic from this side, but the JNF is JNF, and for me and for many Bedouins, it's a racist organization that are trying to take every piece of land, of Arab lands. It doesn't matter anywhere it is, but especially now they are focusing in the Negev. That's why we are talking about JNF now in the Negev. And they still working against the Bedouin community, taking land and doing what they think are sell to the world as making the desert bloom, taking the land. I will come back to the your first question, which is the al-Hiran. al-Hiran, after the death of Yaqub al-Hiran, the teacher, our colleague, in 3 years ago, when he tried to leave the village, he didn't want to see them demolishing his house. So he took his white jeep and his exams of his students and his laptop, and left the village when he didn't know that the police was surrounding the village, and they start shooting and they killed them immediately. Yaqub was severely injured, and they left them bleeding in the car till he died. Then they took his body and didn't want to release them because the police officer said that he is a terrorist from ISIS, from Daesh, and have to be buried only in the night with few people. Finally, we had a big protest, big march to the High Court in Jerusalem, and his body was released. And more than 20,000 people came to give him respect. This is the story of Yaqub, very, very briefly. But after Yaqub, they put a lot of pressure on the families, and they were forced to sign that they agree to move to Hura, the neighboring village there. And now they still have problems with the authorities about preparing the land, giving them the appropriate plots to build their houses and so on. This story didn't end yet. If you visit al-Hiran today, you will see some of the families still there, but it's a question of time till al-Hiran will be eliminated, and nobody will stay there. So you can only remember this very beautiful village, unfortunately. You are muted, Linda.
Sorry, thank you so much, Halil. Can we have your screen removed? Thank you very much. Yes, so al-Hiran is such a tragic story of this village in the middle of the desert being demolished so that the Jewish town of Haran can be built right there. And there are so many other places that they could have located it, but they decide to demolish al-Hiran.
Yes.
So it just doesn't make sense. Thank you for that update. So we know there's still some people there still trying to resist. We'll watch this space. The time is going really quickly. Before Jeff gives a conclusion to today, I'll just say a couple more things about ICAHD UK and our work. I mentioned our campaign with the NSPCC regarding the bulldozers. Another campaign is very directed, connected to the JNF. And this is because it's currently trying to displace a family, the Sumaran family, from their home in Silwan in East Jerusalem. 18 members of this family that in a home built by the family, but for the last 30 years has been coveted by the JNF. At the end of June, the family lost its appeal at the district court in Jerusalem, but with donations that have been given to the family, they've been able to submit an appeal to the Israeli Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has now issued a stay on the eviction, which had originally been planned for the 16th of August. So the family have more time in their home while the Supreme Court debates their case. We have the potential to win this campaign, and if so, it can lead to success with other attempts to evict Palestinians from their homes. Already more than 10,000 people have written to the JNF with messages to try and show mercy to this family. And in the UK, 69 MPs have signed an early day motion, again, in support of the family. But we need everybody to help us. So please go to the ICAHD website. We've got background information and details on how you can act to help this family. In the autumn, ICAHD will be rebuilding its 190th home, done as an act of nonviolent political resistance to Israel's demolition policy. This will happen in the South Hebron Hills. And it's great to bring Palestinians and Israelis together to say they refuse to be enemies. Their future is together. And of course, once the pandemic is over, we will resume our study tours to Palestine, Israel, and appointments to see Halil and Nabila. Do join ICAHD UK, sign up for our monthly newsletters and actions you can take, bulletins, all access to our website. We again are very dependent on people like you to help sustain us because we're not a charity, we're political. And so we don't have access to foundations for funding. Any donations that come from today will be shared also with the organizations that Halil and Nabila are involved with. So you see information on that slide there. But I'd like to move on to Jeff Helper, founder, director of ICAHD, an academic, an anthropologist, an author, very much at the forefront of this struggle, involved with the One Democratic State campaign. I could go on and on and on. So Jeff, I invite you to comment on today's webinar, the whole situation of demolitions and the way forward. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, well, good to see you all. I kind of cynically noted as we were preparing for this that it's like the white man that gets the last word, you know, to put everything in order, which isn't what I really want to do. I mean, first of all, I want to really, it's true. I mean, I'm seriously, I want to respect the space and the analysis of Halil and Nabila, both in terms of the analysis they give, but also in terms of the subject itself. I mean, one of the reasons that I think the house demolition issue has been such a powerful vehicle for us isn't only that it's politically it's important and rich in terms of what it can give us in terms of analysis and understanding, but it really highlights the human tragedy, the human suffering of occupation, and not only occupation, but what I call settler colonialism, Zionism, the whole oppressive system that we have. And that we try always to have up front. In other words, we never try to simply present this as a political issue. But in all our presentations, we start with if I'm just presenting myself or someone else in our group, we always do a slideshow showing the families and showing the experiences of some of the families we've worked with. And as you know, ideally, in pre-corona days when we used to travel, you know, I preferred always to travel with a Palestinian. You know, Salim Shawamri for many years, Atta Jabar, Hisham Sharabati from Hebron. I've been with Nabila. I've been with Nabila for many years, but we were together in London and other places, and many other Palestinians. So we're always trying.
Including Khalil.
I said Khalil.
Oh, sorry.
No, I didn't. I say
You said
no,
Hisham from.
I were in London and we traveled. So what I'm trying to say is that you know, we try to actually even subordinate our voice to the Palestinian voice, you know, and give that, you know, I've always said, you know, sometimes people say, what is your relationship as an Israeli group? Because we're the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. And that's on purpose. Of course, most of our work has been done in the occupied territory, and less so inside Israel. Partly because I have to say that many Palestinians inside Israel that suffer from demolitions don't want this to be too politicized. I mean, it's not like the occupation. Many of them are actually kind of afraid of that, and they prefer to go a legal route or prefer negotiations with the authorities and not to confront the authorities. And for that reason, we've really worked much more in the occupied territories than we have inside 48. But in, you know, in our work, you know, we call ourselves the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions because we're taking responsibility for the demolitions. In other words, it's our government, our electorate really, that is doing the demolitions. And, you know, I mean, it would be very nice to have a joint organization of Israelis and Palestinians, but that really misses the point. The point is that this is an Israeli action. This is an Israeli policy of, you know, that in which the Palestinians are the victims, and calling ourselves Israeli highlights the fact that we're taking responsibility. But having said that, of course, you know, again, we're very sensitive to try to have the proper working relationship. So the way I always phrase it, and it's discussed quite a bit in our circles, is that we're a partner organization with the Palestinians. You know, we feel we're partners, we're stakeholders. I mean, we are Israelis, we're part of the equation, and we're partners in that. You know, we're partners in struggle, but we're the junior partners. And you know, I think in all our work, and it's one reason why we've kept the credibility that we have, I think, with our Palestinian partners, is that we try to have their voice be the voice that's heard. We follow their analysis and we follow their lead. You know, many times we go to Palestinians, you know, with an offer to rebuild a house or to do work or whatever, and many times they'll say no. Or they'll say yes, but, you know, you have the sense that maybe, you know, there's all kinds of things happening within the Palestinian communities that we're not privy to. And so it's very important for us that you know, the Palestinians give the lead. So at any rate, all right. So that's why I say I'd like to leave what Nabila and Khalil have said, you know, on its own in terms of the experience of Palestinians. I don't want to add to that at all. So what I'll say is, you know, you know, and I also don't want to represent Khalil and Nabila because we're a political organization, but we're not their political organization. And our agenda, which has become more and more a one-state solution, isn't necessarily shared by Khalil and Nabila, although we're in negotiations. But nevertheless, you know, what I'm working on a new book now that's going to be published by Pluto in a few months. That's called decolonizing Palestine, decolonizing Israel, liberating Palestine, Zionism, settler colonialism, and the case for one democratic state. And it's also trying to reframe the conflict, that it's not a conflict. I think part of what we have to do is reframe our language, use different language, because as long as you call it a conflict, there's a symmetry to it. There's two sides that are in a conflict. And the way you end a conflict, of course, is, you sit down, you negotiate, you compromise, and you reach peace or whatever the end result is. But this is a case that we're talking about here of settler colonialism. And settler colonialism is not a conflict. There's no two sides. In a settler colonial situation, settlers come, and this is what the Zionist movement was all about. Settlers come to take over a country. They don't ask the native population. They don't negotiate with the native population. The natives, the indigenous people are not a side. Rather, they have to be, and this is a term that's used in settler colonial theory, and I think this is what really Khalil and Nabila are talking about if I go into, put it in a wider context, and that is what's called the elimination of the native. This is a very key part of settler colonial theory, and that is that, what settler colonialism is all about is land. I mean, you don't have a new settler state without land. And the idea is you're not only displacing the native population, but you're eliminating it. Now, elimination doesn't mean necessarily genocide, although that can be part of it. And certainly, there's been more than enough killing of Palestinians, in terms of some kinds of elimination. But rather, it has to do more with trying to destroy them as a culture so that they're not a challenge. They'll never come back to the lands. They'll never be a meaningful presence. They'll be marginalized so that you're replacing their society, their culture, their land, their language, the terms they give to, like Khalil is showing, this part of the Negev becomes the ambassador's forest. You see, or a Palestinian community becomes a biblical Israeli settlement, so that it's not simply a matter of eliminating the people themselves, but eliminating their culture, eliminating their presence. And this is really, I think, the issue that the house demolition, I mean, from my point of view, this is the essence of the conflict. Because if you deny not just a family a house, but writ large, a whole people a home. And of course, in English, home and homeland are very much connected. Then really you're displacing them, you're marginalizing them, you're eliminating them, and trying to create a new, settler society in which they have no role whatsoever. So all that's important by itself in terms of analysis, to give us a language. But it's also important because it leads us to certain conclusions. And I'll end on this idea. And that is, if you're talking about a conflict, I mean, there's no way to really end the conflict with Khalil and the Bedouins in the Negev. We can change policy maybe. We can press the government to stop doing house demolition. We can do this and that, but there's no real way of, and if you look at the occupation, there's no real end to a conflict, because you want the Palestinians to compromise in terms of things that shouldn't be compromised on, like your homeland, your language, your culture, your right of self-determination, your sovereignty. These aren't things to be negotiated. All right, I'll give you, Nabila and Khalil, 22% of your sovereignty. I'll let you be a folklore in a museum somewhere. So that conflict is not the way. You're not going to resolve this through conflict resolution. You know, on the contrary, the only way to end a colonial situation, a settler colonial situation, or any colonial situation, is through decolonization. And decolonization means to dismantle completely all the structures of domination and control that exist. You create a new state that's inclusive. You create a new civil society that's inclusive. And then you create a new political community in which new forms of identities begin to emerge that bring the people together. You know, in some settler societies, of course, like Algeria, the settlers leave. And that's maybe the ideal situation. But in most settler situations, like here, or South Africa, or the United States, or Australia, the settlers are simply too large a group. They're too embedded. They're too powerful. They're not going to leave. And so decolonization here becomes more complex. And that in terms of how do the settlers and the indigenous population really begin to create a new political community that in the end completely ends the whole colonial part of it. So this is and that's what leads us into the one state idea, because that's really I think what's important here to emphasize is that, you know, what Khalil and Nabil are talking about are house demolitions inside Israel, not in the occupied territory. So this whole struggle we have against the occupation misses 78% of the equation. Well, the only concept that covers the entire country is colonialism. That Zionist settler colonialism is colonialism of Palestine, not of 22% of Palestine or 50%. It's all of Palestine, and that's everything. It's being Judaized, being made Jewish. And therefore, decolonization and any kind of political plan you have has to deal with the entire country. And that leads us, I think, into the one state idea. Now, Nabila is right when she says, we've in our conversations, that that's fine, but in the meantime, you know, you have to struggle. You have to, you know, you can't just suspend everything and go, which is true. And, you know, we're certainly not, you know, we're still active on the house demolition issue. We're still, you know, everything is being done from BDS to fighting the wall to settlements to all the struggles we have, women's struggles and so on. Should we have to continue doing them? Of course. But they have to be linked, in my view, to a political program. So that they're leading somewhere, because otherwise I'm afraid we'll be in a situation where 30 years from now, where we're all much grayer, we'll still be talking about house demolitions and all these, because the only way to really resolve them, you know, because you're not going to change Israeli policy. And I guess this is the point I want to make, and then I'll shut up. And that is that the whole idea of eliminating the natives, of taking their land, of eliminating their cultures, of doing everything that Khalil and Nabila are talking about, is built into the system. It isn't a policy. It isn't something that you can reform and, okay, now we will end house. No, house demolitions comes from the very essence, the very logic of Zionist settler project, because you want the land, so that you're not going to change things, you know, by you know, these kinds. So in other words, you have to do both things. You have to put pressures on through all our different battles, but always, I think, with the bigger, and this is what I'm hoping we can begin to create here, a bigger goal, you know, link it to an end game, which in the end has to be one democratic state. I don't see any other option, and that's the only way you're going to decolonize, and in the end, the only way you're going to end house demolition issue, I think. So.
Thank you, Jeff.
Might as well end up with some theory, why not?
Thank you. Yes, the academic coming through. First thing I want to say is that the next ICAHD webinar is going to actually be a workshop on strategic campaigning. You know, so as we work on these issues, looking where we can win, you know, where are the battles? Where should the battles be fought that we can win to move on to this bigger picture of the justice, the equality that we want to see for every human being. We're going to, again, have this focus on strategic campaigning. It's going to be 2 hours in September. I'd hope to have the date to give you today. I can't. But it's going to be led by Monica Wusterman, who's the chair of ICAHD UK. And working with her will be 2 or 3 activists from the Shoal Collective and corporate occupation in the UK. So again, seasoned campaigners. So that news will come. It leaves me to thank everybody for attending this webinar, for sitting and listening so patiently in this unbearable heat we're having in the UK. Thank you, Nabila, for your contribution from Nazareth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Halil, to speaking to us from the Naqab in the desert, and Jeff in Jerusalem. You've given us, again, so much to think about on an extremely painful subject, and one we do want to see resolved. So, Jeff, thank you for giving us the vision to hold in front of us. So, again, thank you one and all for coming. Hope to see you soon, and in the meantime, please stay safe and well. Bye-bye.